Recording and or broadcast of this meeting is being made at the direction of the board, which may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. We'll call the roll. Steve? Here. Vladimir?
Present.
Shelley?
Here.
Jessica?
Here.
I'm also here. All board members are in attendance. Let's stand for pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was back in grade school.
Would any board members like to provide comment on the agenda? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion to approve the agenda made by Vladimir, seconded by Shelley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Study session.
Yes, well, we are here this evening to do some deeper dive into our existing bond and potential future bond. We are thrilled to have one of our financial team, Makiko Sato, who used to work for LASD as a financial advisor and is back. And then I understand we have a couple more members who are stuck in an accident in traffic at the moment. So I don't know, Eric, if you want to kind of kick it off and.
I didn't. That was a little confusing.
Sorry, not in an accident, stuck in traffic because of that.
They'll be on their way.
It'll be fine.
After they exchanged insurance.
Yeah, Dave Olson will be here also, and you've met Dave before, and Dave and Makiko have worked together on a lot of projects as well, and used to work together as so they are both our co-financial advisors for the district. And then Katie Dobson is with Jones Hall Law Firm, they're our bond counsel, and she'll also be here to talk about some of the, if there's any questions that you might have. Makiko's gonna give a high-level update of how Measure N is shaping up. We do have to pay the bands back this October. So we're gonna be bringing a resolution to the board in May to do the authorization for the resolution. And then also for the Trend, what we borrow every year to meet our cash flow needs. So Makiko's gonna give an overview of Measure N and the bond program and what a potential future bond program, the financing, what that would look like. So, up to you.
All right, well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here and I apologize for the mask. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Let me know if you can't. I'll try to enunciate even more. So to start out, the district voters have approved 2 bond authorizations. 1998 Measure 8 for 94.7 million and the 2014 Measure N for 150 million. District voters approved Measure N with 57.4% support. The 75 word ballot question, and just in case you want to review it again, is in that highlighted box. In 2019, the district issued its first series of bonds, the series A-1 and A-2, under that 2014 Measure N authorization, along with a bond anticipation note. There is 85 million in authorized but unissued bonds remaining from Measure N. Most of the bond proceeds, 79 million, will be used to pay the bond anticipation notes. And as of June 30th, 2023, the Measure N building fund had a fund balance of 33 million, of which 10.4 million were from TDR proceeds. I know that figure is a little dated, but it's still fairly accurate, I think, based on discussions with Eric. So you may recall the 2019 financing had 3 separate components, totaling a par amount of 144 million. So the Series A-1 bonds were the tax exempt long-term bonds. The par amount of that was 55 million. And that was a regular GO bond repaid from future property tax receipts. The Series A-2 were the taxable bonds, and the intended purpose was to fund deferred maintenance needs over 10 years. And that was issued on a taxable basis because it was not going to qualify for the spend down requirements for tax exempt bonds. And finally, there was a taxable bond anticipation note for 79 million. And that was intended to be the component of the purchase price of the property that would be offset by the TDR sales. So the bands were issued in 2019, and they were actually rolled over in 2021. And so, as Eric mentioned, the maturity date of those bonds is October 1st, 2024. Unfortunately, that's really close to the 5-year maximum, so there's no opportunity for the district to roll that again. So this is a slide with a lot of words on it. But I think, what is clear that the events after 2019 didn't unfold exactly the way they were planned and anticipated. And so some of the same issues that were present in 2019 and 2021 are still present today. And there's some additional complications about the continued receipt of lease revenues from commercial tenants on the property. When the Bond and Tax Council did their analysis in connection with the initial financing, the assumption was that those tenants will only be there for 2 years. And that's why the district, they were comfortable issuing those tax exempt bonds. Given that that timeframe, didn't work out exactly as planned, the new Bond Council and Tax Council, Jones Hall, is just looking into these issues. One option that may help to address some of these private use issues is to issue a portion of the upcoming general obligation bond issuance on a taxable basis. And taxable bonds, since investors will need to pay tax on the interest income, do tend to have a higher borrowing rate than tax exempt bonds. We've been in conversations with Eric about how to mitigate the additional interest costs associated with taxable bonds by perhaps shortening the repayment term on the bond from what was originally planned. We might be able to explore, shorter call feature, extraordinary call options, other opportunities that might provide the district with some flexibility, especially if it's anticipated that the district might receive some TDR proceeds in the future. So Jones Hall, I would say that they are still in an information gathering phase. Originally our anticipation, when we set up this financing schedule was for the district board to receive this presentation for the board action later today. But as Eric mentioned, we postponed that to May just so that we can give Jones Hall a little bit more time to look into this issue so that we have a little bit more certainty about what the financing looks like before the board authorizes the issuance. The great news is that because of the strong assessed valuation growth, the Measure N bond program will be implemented at tax rates that are significantly lower than the $30 for $100,000 in assessed value that was provided to voters at the time of the election. So when you look at this graph here, the bars, the blue and the gold represent the debt service payments in connection with the Series 2019 or the Series A and the Series B bonds. The red line represents the projected revenue from the $30 for $100,000 in assessed value, assuming a 3.5% growth in your assessed value over time. And you can see that gap between that red line and the red bars, meaning that the tax rate will be lower than that $30.
So if we went up to the red line in terms of bonding, would that exceed the whatever percentage is of the total valuation?
Oh, the bonding capacity?
Yeah,
Oh, so those are two separate rules. The statutory bonding.
right, I know, but I'm saying if we went up to the red line, $30 for $100,000 assessed value, would we then also exceed the
statutory bonding capacity?
yeah, or not?
No.
So if we went up to the total bonding capacity, we would exceed the $30.
Those are two separate parts of the ed code. And so there are two separate tests that we do. So one is in connection with Prop 39, and that's the tax rate test. So for every single Prop 39 bond election, when the district issues bonds, they need to be able to project that the projected tax rates associated with that measure will be under $30 for $100,000 excess value. There's a separate analysis that we do to see whether the total amount outstanding of bonds does not exceed 1.25% of the district's tax base. So they're very similar, but they're, separate.
Right.
tests. Yeah.
What I'm asking is which one would we hit first if we started increasing our bond capacity?
Oh, that's a great question.
Sorry, but isn't the answer to your question that Measure N only authorized $150 million in bond?
Right, but if we're going out for another bond,
Sure,
we could go out for,
but this slide is about the remaining Measure N bonds. So this slide is about the 85 million in authorized but unissued bonds that we have left over for Measure N. And just showing that we can in fact issue them because we'll stay
no,
under the 30.
it's not. Says projected revenue with $30 tax rate.
Yeah, for the 2014 Series B.
Yeah, this is just for the Measure N bond authorization. I apologize. We actually will go into the new authorization and some of the later slides.
Okay, fine.
Okay, Katie.
Hi.
It's Katie Dobson
Sorry.
with Jones Hall.
I just got stuck behind a big accident.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank
you for
you.
being here.
Yeah, and the idea here is that, we might be able to, usually what we do when, the district issues bonds is to have a 25 or 30-year repayment term. But we're talking about shortening that final maturity to match the final maturity of the Series A bonds. And to Vladimir's point, it is possible to potentially shorten the repayment term even more to go up to that full $30 per $100,000 in assessed value. The Series B issuance schedule, we are having this board study session tonight on March 18th with the district board meeting on May 6th being the target for the approval of an authorizing resolution. We would then start the reading process in mid-May with the county board meeting on May 21st. Shortly after the county meets and approves the financing, we will post a preliminary official statement, which is the main disclosure document that goes out to investors. And then the bond pricing will happen in early June with closing in early July. The thought process here is to align the Series B issuance with the TRAN issuance so that it would minimize the costs that we mainly pay to Katie, so that the disclosure document is combined into one document. You might still be two documents, but the information will be largely the same between the two. And then also, have a little bit more efficiency in terms of the rating agency presentation, so that we'll be able to address both in one presentation. And of course, we wanted to have the closing so that it aligns, it's within 90 days of the, it does not work. 90 days of the ban maturity, just making sure that we did that. Yeah. All right. So this is where we switch over to the potential new authorization, but why don't I stop there to see if there's any questions about what we
Existing
discussed.
Measure N.
Anybody? Is there anything, Katie, we touched briefly on the questions around the taxable versus
Yeah.
tax exempt. I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
I saw I got here on slide 7 and I was supposed to cover slide 6.
I wanted to give you a chance to add any color you wanted to
I
add to
would,
that slide.
yeah, I'm sure everyone is aware of the circumstances. The expectations are a little different than how things actually turned out. So I have 2 tax partners that I've been working with to do diligence on this, and Eric has been so generous with his time, and I'm actually meeting with Randy and Peter Ingram tomorrow, who have also been very helpful. So often getting information is the hardest part of the diligence process, and that has not been an issue. So I expect that we'll have some firm guidance soon, and we're trying to get the most advantageous outcome for the district. So I'm not sure yet what exactly we're gonna advise, but we should know soon regarding the tax status of the new bonds.
Just for the new bonds.
Correct.
So there's no sort of, I don't know, issues or implications based on the fact that things didn't work out exactly the way we thought in terms of the existing bonds that we,
The Series A1
Series A,
bonds.
yeah, A1.
I don't expect that there's an issue with the A1 bonds, but I can't say for sure yet, because we're still in the information gathering process. But right now, it doesn't look like there's an issue for those bonds.
And what Katie is and her tax partners are planning to do is, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the plan was for you to, once you're done gathering information, to talk about the original assumptions,
Right.
and then kind of the analysis in connection with
Yes.
the Series B bonds.
Yes, we want to present to you all sort of a summary of everything that happens to our understanding and why we're coming out the way we're coming out, in case you get questions from taxpayers or community members about the circumstances of the last few years.
Are there any other implications procedurally or anything else other than obviously the interest rate is likely to be higher between issuing tax exempt and taxable bonds?
Yeah, no, that's the main thing that we're looking at. Yeah. I think we've gotten comfortable with with our understanding of everything that happened and why everything was structured the way that it was. So now we're just, trying to gather our last facts.
Okay.
Yeah, other than tax implications, we're not concerned by it.
Thank you. Think we move on?
All right. So the potential new bond authorization. So one of the key inputs into any bond model is assessed valuation growth. And so I think I ran out of space here. because I have data going back to 1999, but from 2007 to 2024, the average assessed value growth per year has been 6.37%. Going back to 2090, since 1999, the average AV growth is even higher at 7.41%. So the district aid for 2024 is currently 33.4 billion.
That's of all homes in whatever in Los Altos School District.
Yes, all the properties within Los Altos School District specifically.
Thank you.
So the box on the bottom right is the statutory bonding capacity. So whenever the district issues bonds, elementary school districts need to certify that the total amount of bonds outstanding doesn't exceed 1.25% of the tax base.
You're a second even behind me.
We decided.
I just got here.
Safely.
Welcome,
Well-
Dave Olson. Thank you, Dave. No problem.
So the district's current gross bonding capacity, so that's the assessed value times 1.25%, is 417.2 million. The district has 53 million in bonds outstanding, leaving 364.2 million in net bonding capacity.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
It's 53 million, but we issued more than that in Series A. So is that just sort of we paid that
Paid
much
off.
down?
Paid off some. Yeah, I think it's worthwhile to note though that the 364.2 million is the net bonding capacity currently, but the district would issue 85 million, so we also need to subtract that out of the net.
But the tax base is gonna be growing over time.
With bonds being repaid as well.
I'm sorry, could you repeat what you said about your last sentence here, 85 million?
Oh, so this is the net bonding capacity currently, based on bonds that are outstanding now, but as the district issues that 85 million later this year, we'll need to
Okay.
also, take that out. That doesn't factor in that 85 million. All right, so, this is the table that shows bond proceeds, raised depending on different assumptions. So that first row. No, the first row there. Is what I'll call the baseline case, the assumptions that I typically use, and Dave, I think you do too, assessed valuation growth of 3.5% per year, estimated borrowing rate of about 5%, and 3 series of bonds issued every other year. So that is generating total bond proceeds based on that model, about 286 million. The second row down, we've changed the assumption. So instead of 3 series, now we've moved to 4 series. So issuing 2025, 27, 29, and 31, which might correspond, better to the district's project needs. So with that change, it actually increases the total bond proceeds to 33 million. The third row down, we said, well, but the district, assessed valuation growth has been, over 6% per year since 2007. What if we change the assumption to 4% per year? That increases the total bond proceeds to 339 million. And then, estimated borrowing rate, the district is highly rated, 5% is, usually the baseline case that we use, so we assumed a slightly lower borrowing rate. And that yields the 350 million. And that 350 million is what, we used, for survey purposes. The district is not at all committed to that 350 million. We thought it would be good to test something that's on the higher end of what the district is considering. And depending on what the survey results show, that can be modified, but we wanted to kind of show the sensitivity to different assumptions and how that changes the bond sizing.
In general, Makiko, you'd say it's better to have, especially in this situation where the needs are so great, better to have authorization that you can't access because the assumptions didn't come true than to go for a lower amount and not have the opportunity to take advantage of better results.
It's a very leading.
Would you say that's true?
Yes, or no?
I would say, well, I think we've had a lot of discussions about this, and going back to your Measure N, knowing what we know now, I think we would have recommended, or Dave would have recommended a larger bond sizing. That program didn't get implemented in the timeframe, it was originally planned. And the idea here is that, we might want to be a little bit more optimistic in terms of our assumptions, besides this bond program a little bit larger. The risk, which is, what Dave is, kind of pointing to, is if the AV flattens out over the next couple of years, it might mean that you have authorization that you might not be able to access. But we think that might be a better situation than, thinking, hey, we could have issued more bonds and we didn't get it authorized.
Chance to make a different mistake this time.
But as long as we don't issue it, we're in compliance if there's an issue.
Yeah, the authorization doesn't expire.
Thank you.
Do you have a sense of how far from the maximum sort of likely capacity? So on the previous slide, right, you sort of said now it's 400 and something million, of which 360, but it's really gonna be 280 after we issue the $85 million.
Yeah.
Like, what was it, if we wanted to sort of issue what we think the, maximum, up to what we think the maximum bonding capacity will be in 2031, do you have any sense of how big that number would be?
People that punch it out. I haven't done it, but I'm not concerned about it being an issue.
I'm just wondering how much larger it would be. But we can move on if it's not. That's your
But I
bigger
think they will. They will.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, you were gonna go with it.
This was gonna be I was gonna do the first 3 slides and then this one. So this is, right, I think the story here is that the district that we've talked about it before is as compared to your neighboring districts, has invested in its facilities, has held fewer bond elections and put fewer bond dollars into its facilities, both on a tax rate basis, on a bond dollar per AV basis, on a bond dollar per student basis. Just about every elementary school in the county has had more elections than you, but this year is funding it higher.
Yeah, and it's worthwhile to note that Sunnyvale just passed a new bond authorization, so it won't get on the 25 tax roll, but soon they'll go up another $30. I would also point out that we are looking to go up to that for full $30 for Metro, or a little bit of a higher rate after we issue the Series B bond. So even with that, I think we'll be very close to the bottom, if not the bottom, except for Lakeside, that's a 0, but no bonds.
So I have a question. Luther Burbank, $153.60 per $100,000 valuation. How come it's more than $30?
Multiple elections.
What's that?
You get,
$30
$30 per election.
What's interesting is Luther Burbank and Orchard are one school district, yeah. Just one school district.
Yeah.
Yeah, FYI.
You're much lower AP.
Yes. Oh, good point.
That's actually a really interesting point in that there are some inequities built into the system where, you know, your bonding capacity. Bonding capacity is based on your assessed value. So sometimes those larger tax rates, the higher tax rates are necessary to raise equal amounts of funding for students. I think that's it for our presentation.
The answer is that your bonding capacity will be up by another 150 million or more, by the end of the year program.
But what's that?
It would be up to, from 415 to 565.
So like 565.
By,
That's what I,
by when?
by 2030.
No.
We have great experts in the room, so we want to make sure you feel like you have the information you need. Separately from today's presentation, you know that we've hired Team Civics and EMC Polling to do some preliminary. I think they're in the middle of polling right now within the community using that 350 number. I haven't heard anything about, I think by the end of this month, the goal was to finish up that polling, so we will bring those results back when they're available. But this is a big decision for the district, and it works along with our facilities master plans. I'll be giving you an update in my superintendent's update just about where we are in that process, but we're hoping by the end of the year to have kind of a nice package available for you all to consider our facilities master plan, results from initial polling and any discussion around, do we want to do a mid-year polling? And then, of course, we're working on the tent site itself and who will occupy that tent site and what funds may be available through a bond program to build on there. So all the pieces are slowly coming together, but I do want to make sure, since we have our great team here, that you've asked and understand all the information that's coming your way
Can you go
today.
back to the slide?
And I got my own session with them.
Good. So, and if you don't have questions today, that's okay. There'll be an opportunity for you to ask additional questions. Either you can email us, email me, and we can work with David McKeeko and Katie, but also there'll be a future meeting on May 6th, which is where we'll be doing the authorization. So it'll be another opportunity to answer any questions, and they could be here also at that time if needed. They won't be here, but if needed for that day.
So I have a question. Have any school districts floated a bond with voter approval that immediately goes to pay off an existing bond? And there's a specific reason I'm asking the question.
Not to pay off an existing bond. Sometimes school districts use their general obligation authorization to pay off lease financings. That's something that we write into the bond language. But the purpose of the bond authorization is for capital improvements, not to pay off existing debts.
Well, you could make the bond for anything, right? Well, more or less, but
No, you cannot make it right.
For 55%, right?
Right, it has to be for, well, even a 2/3 election. It's meant for capital improvements.
okay, that's good enough. Yeah.
I'm curious as to why you're out.
We have a restriction in our current bond that it be used for blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
I want to use it for something else. Which is, other districts have used it for, public housing, teacher or workforce housing. We can't use a current bond for workforce housing. But if we issued a new set of bond, a new set of regulations for, that included, workforce housing, we could pay off the old bond and, move forward.
I don't know that there would be a reason to pay off the old bonds. You could
The
move forward
reason
with the
to,
workforce housing bond by itself.
well, the reason would be, might be, to, assuage the community that we're not increasing anything. Okay, we're just
Yeah.
shifting things around to make it more,
Yeah, I mean, what districts have done sometimes is to get bonds, I don't know what the right terminology is, reauthorized. So you can actually go back to the voters to, you know, let's say the district has 50 million in unissued bonds, you can go back to the voters and say, we'd like to have you reapprove this with a different project. in it.
so you wouldn't have to reissue anything. You just
Yeah, you
have,
wouldn't have to issue the bonds and then,
Okay.
you know, take them out with another, you could go back to the voters and ask them to just reauthorize to change the purpose. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. yeah, that's good. That would work.
Is that a 55% or a 2/3?
It would be 55 because the authorization was 55.
Okay. What about, my understanding for teacher housing though is that it's not 55%. I understand it would be 2/3.
So now we can do it with a 55% bond.
Yes.
Yeah, there have been some updates to the law.
Great.
And this is outside of my purview, but I
Yeah.
would say they're not that popular so
Yeah.
far. Some have passed, but there's a lot of discussion.
Mountain View Wisdom did pass one. But I understood it was 2/3.
Okay.
You mind going back to the slide where you're showing the $30 per 100,000? Why? No, further back, with respect to the measure and,
Sure.
yeah, that one. So am I thinking about this correctly when it sort of seems one reason to sort of pull in the repayment schedule and push it up to that 30 is because they're then freeing up bonding capacity faster, essentially.
It will help with the bonding capacity, but from our perspective, what we wanted to do was reduce the interest costs on the measurement.
Sure.
That was
sort
the
of
key
it's
driver.
right.
Yeah.
the balancing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you wanted to spread it out, the cost would be a little bit lower.
Right.
So that'd be a choice.
But to the extent that the taxable rates are a little bit higher, we might want to shorten the term to manage the interest expense.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking about is, like, I think our needs are pretty close, if not exceeding our overall bonding capacity. So I feel like that may be, in my mind, sort of the more important thing is to make sure that we can maximize our use of our bonding capacity.
This is a rough question. I mean, the answer I expected rough. Right? If you have $100 million in bond, given our typical interest rates, blah, 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 over 30 years, how much are we paying over principal? In percentage, 30%, 20%, 50%?
Between 85 and 115% is the figure I'd give. We use a very
Oh, really?
conservative interest rate. So you $100 million worth of bonds costs 185 to pay off. If you're modeling it out very conservatively, it comes out to 215, and then you come in below that and take a bow. Is that fair?
You know, it's very similar to mortgage payments, right? If you're extending out, the payments over 30 years. It usually ends up to be about a 2-to-1 repayment ratio, with total debt service about 2 times the principal.
And that's it, right? Everybody knows it's cheaper to pay off have a 15-year mortgage, but everyone wants to buy a house that takes a 30-year mortgage, right?
More money over time, but less money
Yeah.
each year.
So it's balancing that tax burden for your community, over time. I'd also argue that, the thought process is that you're investing in school facilities that will last, 20, 30 years. It makes sense for taxpayers to pay that back over time. So the tax burden isn't, just on the people who are living here over the next 5 years, if there are people living here over the next 30 years to get the benefit of facilities.
Okay.
Can you remind me of the regulations around how quickly to spend the bond once issued?
Yes, so very generally, high level, when you issue the bonds, you should expect to issue at least 85% within 3 years.
Or spend.
Sorry.
Issue,
spend,
spend,
sorry,
okay.
sorry, to spend at least 85% of the proceeds of that issuance within 3 years.
Within 3 years?
Yes.
That's per series.
Right, right.
So we could still make money, right, Eric? We could issue some bond money and reinvest it and spend it within 3 years and. Yeah,
You could, actually, that's a great point, because, just, going back 2 years ago, we couldn't earn anything on bond proceeds sitting in the building fund, now we're getting close to where the earnings are close to the arbitrage yield on the.
Yeah, the bond fund has earned, obviously with higher interest rates, the bond fund has earned some interest from the county, in the county pool. But for sure, but we also, there's a trade-off with that is, if you're not spending it, then the cost escalation is going up as well. So you'd like to spend it as quickly as you possibly can manage it because of cost escalation. So, construction costs up in the Bay Area are higher than anywhere else, in the state. So you really want to be mindful of cash flow, having enough cash on hand to spend it on projects and get those projects done as soon as possible. It's very expensive. DSA, school construction is very expensive, so the sooner we have the authorization and manage the program, it's better for the district and the taxpayers.
this is fun stuff.
Sorry, Pete, so just to confirm, the maximum that we can go out for a bond in November is 280 million. Is that what they?
No.
I thought we had to subtract 80 million,
Oh,
right?
so the statutory bonding capacity, so that's a snapshot, that's a figure that we come up today, but, what we were talking about earlier is that as the assessed value grows over time during the implementation of the new bond measure, which can happen over 8 years, that bonding capacity figure will grow, continues to grow.
Okay.
And so I think this is a number that we want to keep our eye on. But, we wouldn't size the new bond just based off of this. We would, really rely on the tax rate model to size it.
Okay,
And it's okay if your authorization exceeds your current capacity, you just can't issue that authorization until your capacity grows to come.
but you could issue up to 85% of capacity that you.
Sorry, the 85% is totally different. That was
Okay.
confusing. So for when you issue the bonds, if they're tax exempt bonds, the IRS doesn't want you to issue tax exempt bonds and then just sit on those proceeds so that you can earn money. So they want to make sure that you're getting that money out the door as quickly as possible. So at the time that you issue bonds, there are a number of things that we all look at, the bonding capacity, the tax rate, and also your spend down. So we want to make sure that within 3 years, you have a reasonable expectation that you're going to be able to spend 85% of those proceeds. Yeah, so the 85% is a different. Yeah, no, that's okay. It's, a lot
Well,
of
I was
percentages.
thinking,
I can spend money.
I was listening to a podcast, and so there are districts, like you happen to get an authorization at the wrong time, like then the economy collapses and your tax base doesn't go up. Like there are districts that get stuck where they've gotten authorization, but they can't issue any bonds because their capacity hasn't grown to the point where they.
What podcast we have?
The Lozano Smith podcast.
Very specific.
Yeah, I find this really to be interesting because I don't think it's something you guys had when we went out from term, right? Like looking at it this way.
Scenarios.
Yeah. like-
This is not controversy around doing it at all.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah.
I do know that, but this is
I'm
not
not-
something I understood at all, and this is,
Because-
it's eye opening for sure.
And the measure and bonds are the only bonds we have right now, right? Like Prop H is,
Completely
Gone.
repaid as of 2023.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, just
Last year, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
last,
just got
August
repaid.
was our last payment on
Yeah.
those.
Oh, okay.
Why didn't we have a celebration?
That's a good question.
This is it.
Oh, we're laughing because it's so sad.
It is really sad that we only like, you know, looking at all those districts that we had to ever.
And our schools show that,
Yeah.
I think, to
Yeah,
some extent,
absolutely.
right, the condition of our schools.
And I think, I mean, during the facility master planning process, Brent, McClure, one of the architects, and he was commenting, the schools they look reasonably okay. But if you look at what other districts look like, it's a big difference. So I think that's where that last slide talks about all the other districts have passed multiple bond measures. Some of them 3, 4 elections, and we just haven't been able to do that. So I think our facilities do need the modernization of just the schools it's a big ask. There's a lot of needs for sure.
How many bond issuances, during your time at Fremont Union and prior?
I was there for 18 years and I think we passed, 3 or 4 bonds, almost $500 million. And was that about right? 400?
Yeah, they had 08, 14, 18, 22.
Yeah.
For the years. So.
Yeah,
And probably as a whole, $1 billion.
pretty close. If you
Pretty
include,
close.
yeah,
I believe that's what the town crier said was.
yeah,
roughly.
1998 also, the 1998 bond too, yeah. So yeah, a considerable amount of bonds.
Yeah.
It's a high school only district, only 5 schools, but it looks, they all have the same needs, right? Roofs, HVAC, plumbing, paint, everything, they all have similar needs. Just a bigger, they have swimming pools and we don't have that, but just different needs for sure.
But that's a great program to look at because it really shows that right, all the facilities that were modernized with the 1998 bond are now at a point where they need to be modernized again. So, I think a lot of school districts like the idea of, hey, this is our one bond, we're gonna fix everything and but that's just not reality.
Yeah.
That, facility needs are ongoing. And so we want to be mindful of kind of that long-term need.
Yeah.
Just having regular access to capital facilities, especially as we're looking at a new bond program.
And at the beginning of a program like that, right, the tax rate starts to rise with each new election, but the further along you get, you're far enough along on the repayment schedule that the Fremont High School District is levying, very similar tax rate than they were like 15 or 20 years ago, and these new bonds come on the ballot and don't really move the needle on what taxpayers are paying.
Then the other thing, I think Measure N was passed 10 years ago, but we didn't have a universal transitional kindergarten. There's so many universal meals. So there's a lot of new programs that we're required to provide updated facilities for that many school districts are dealing with the same issue. That
Yeah.
Transitional kindergarten is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Making sure you've got the right facility to meet that really unfunded mandate from the state.
Anything else?
I'll just add one thing about timing. I know we looked at the schedule. That's for the next bond issuance for the election. If you decide to call a bond election, for November, the deadline to submit everything to the county is at the beginning of August, so that will be a summertime decision.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the slowing down.
Yeah.
Glad you made it here safely. That's the most important thing.
It looked like everyone was safe. A truck turned over and wood chips were everywhere, so. but it-
Oh, wow.
There was a truck on one side and a
Big
giant
pile on
pile
the
of wood
other.
shop in the
Yeah.
middle, and everybody funneled through the middle.
It seemed like everyone was okay, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so
Nice
much.
to meet you.
Thank you.
All right. Adjourn.